This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Hawke's Bay, a community access media station. Thank you to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.
I'm a dreamer of 3D pictures. I'm a traveler.
Good afternoon, it's Nikki Palamountain here from Dyslexia Unpuzzled, based right here in Hawke's Bay. Welcome to our monthly podcast where we dive into incredible stories of transformation and triumph from members of our community. At Dyslexia Unpuzzled, we're passionate about supporting neurodiverse individuals and their families to overcome challenges, whether it's with learning, focus, or navigating life with neurodivergence. As always, we are broadcasting on Radio Hawke's Bay, 104.7 FM and 1431 AM. It is my pleasure this afternoon to introduce my esteemed colleague, Rochelle Booth from Dyslexia Unlocked in South Taranaki, Wanganui District. Rochelle has been a Davis Facilitator for 19 years now, Rochelle. She's a mum of 2 kids and a wife of a self-employed electrician, hockey coach extraordinaire and Wanganui board member, or Hockey Wanganui board member, and a presenter for Davis Learning Strategies. Thank you so much, Rochelle, for finding time in your very busy schedule today. It's really cool to have you along.
Thanks for having me, Nikki. It's very exciting to be able to share a little bit about where I've been and where we're heading. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, well, we're really excited to talk to you. And first of all, let's just start. Please, could you share where have you come from? Where's your background and how did you get started on the trajectory that you are today?
Well, I started doing my teaching degree down in Otago University. Did my phys ed degree and then my teaching diploma on top of that. And from there was doing some teaching practicums. And in my teaching practicums, I could not understand how I could be trying to teach Year 9 maths to children that couldn't read their textbooks, their maths questions. When I got my first job, I was working in adult literacy and numeracy with 14, 15, 16-year-olds that have been removed from school for behaviour, learning difficulties, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. And I also couldn't understand how these kids were so clever at some things, yet couldn't remember or understand that a half and a half equals a whole. So for me, it kind of made me go, how is there this massive mismatch when these kids are clearly smart? It's not that they don't have the intellectual capacity for learning. There's just something not right. And so then I read The Gift of Dyslexia, written by Ronald Davis. And I went to my first lot of training to prove Ronald Davis wrong, because in my head at that time, he was just an American guy, and what do Americans know? But in 4 days, Nikki, I was more inspired than my 4 years at university. What Ron had to say made sense, and it helped me to understand why we had so many clever kids that we were trying to work with that we were getting nowhere with. Because of the way they were thinking so differently and how traditional education just didn't get to them.
Well, that's a really cool story, Rochelle. So, thankfully those people you've been able to do something. So, and is that what initially drew you to become a Davis Facilitator?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did my first 4-day workshop with Ronald Davis and Catherine Churton in Auckland. I came away and did some practice with my 9-year-old second cousin who didn't know how to spell his surname and couldn't do his alphabet. And after 2 days, he could spell his surname and do his alphabet forwards and backwards easily. And I was like, okay, this is for real. So I continued on my training from there.
Oh, that's so cool. Well done to you. So, and I understand that you started using some of the Davis techniques with your own children when they were quite young. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my son was 3 years and 10 months old when he started getting confused with some speech. So he would say grapes instead of grapes and brass instead of grass. And I kind of went, hang on, this doesn't make sense to let him develop a second set of language that's incorrect. So that was the perfect motivator to start with the Davis focusing strategies, just to see how low I could go. I mean, it was my own children. I wasn't going to muck anyone else's kids up.
What could go wrong?
That's right. And it was literally did the focusing strategies with him, and he's never had a speech problem since.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Absolutely amazing. And then with my daughter, she was 3 years and 2 months old. She was getting really tangled with her words, so her brain was just going so fast and she couldn't say what she wanted to say. She was really verbal. And within a week of her using her focusing strategies, she suddenly had her shoes on the right feet. And we'd painted nails and talked about big, long toes and big, long parts of shoes. But suddenly she could see it as it was actually meant to be. And we've never had another problem with left and right.
Oh, that's cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely spectacular.
Yeah. So over the 19 years you've been a facilitator, what are the talents and strengths you've consistently seen with dyslexic learners?
They're fantastic in their visuals, so they can see things that I can't see easily, being more of a word thinker than a picture thinker. So my understanding of what a word thinker was through what I learned at university was absolutely incorrect. I didn't realise, but I had no idea that people would read a book and translate those words into pictures and like watch a movie in their head. I had no idea that that's what reading for comprehension was all about. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, I used to read to get to the end of the book and get on to the next thing. Don't know how I missed that piece of the puzzle, but I did. And so right through school, that's what I did, was I just read to get, you know, the tick in the box. But I had poor understanding. And the dyslexic mind is so clever that when something makes sense completely, so they've got that three-dimensional picture of it, they don't forget it. Mm-hmm. They've got it.
Yeah.
The worst thing for dyslexics is trying to ask them to memorise.
Right.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
Whereas the dyslexics I work with are incredible, often dancers or musicians or artists, really great at drawing, building, creating. So, yeah, heaps and heaps of strengths. And it's really important, I think, that we work in that strength-based world of theirs instead of trying to drag them into the two-dimensional world of words, that we actually go into their three-dimensional picture-thinking world.
Yeah, because what do people often miss when they focus only on the challenges that a dyslexic person has? You know, they miss out on all that, don't they?
Absolutely. And they only see the deficits.
Right, yeah.
They don't see the brilliance. And like for us, we've got our own business, and it was a real advantage to have an employee work for us who is dyslexic, because he sees the world differently. And so he can be downstairs in a house and just know in his head what it looks like above and the dimensions and where that light needs to be or where that cable needs to be run to. Whereas someone more like me and more of a word thinker would need to probably draw it down on a piece of paper and try and visualize it or see it that way. Whereas the speed of picture thinking is just so quick and so efficient that it's a real advantage to have those creative hands-on learners in your business. You know, you might get some misspelt words like ensuite being O-N-S-W-E-E-T instead of E-N-S-U-I-T-E. But you know what? What does that matter?
What does that matter?
I understand.
Yeah.
Yep, I understand what's meant, and so I just fix it at my end because that's my strength.
Well, there you go. And I mean, what a brilliant arrangement. So, and I just love that way that they can just use that perception, and it must be so much more efficient having someone that can just visualise that whole plan as you've just described.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that saying a picture speaks 1,000 words, that kind of says it all for me. Like I have to do a lot of talking to be able to explain what a picture thinker can see in a split second.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Know that feeling. And sometimes the explanation still doesn't paint the same picture, does it? So, yeah.
Not at all.
No. Cool. So how did your journey as a Davis Facilitator lead you to becoming to become a presenter of the Davis Learning Strategies, or what are the Davis Learning Strategies?
So I've always had a passion for teaching, Nikki. I love building relationships and working with children. And so when I started facilitating, I was sort of drawn to younger children anyway. And I kind of went, why are we only getting to these kids one at a time in a private program when we can actually be doing it on a much bigger scale? And Sharon Pfeiffer and Ron Davis had put together an amazing program called Davis Learning Strategies. And so under the brilliance of Gail Hallinan, I trained to become a presenter. And I just love how when it's kept in its purity, the transformation of our kids is just incredible. Mm-hmm. Not only does their reading and their writing ability increase, Nikki, but also their ability to hammer in a nail without hitting their thumb or ride their mountain bike over a jump without falling off. You know, it's those real life things that
absolutely.
Those changes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember one school principal, he was really, he was asking his children why they enjoyed Davis and what is it that they noticed the biggest changes. And it was about riding their bike and hammering in their nail. And he was just like, you know, kind of, where's the reading change? But these kids were happier because they were more focused. They had a more accurate perception of time, of balance, you know, and of themselves and where they are in space. And so their whole world changed. And one of the teachers at that school, the biggest change she noticed with using Davis Learning Strategies was their maths scores increased dramatically because suddenly they didn't have the issues with looking at a screen. They could read their questions more easily. And so these kids that struggle with learning literacy skills, often that can impact their ability to do maths because of the amount of words in maths, when really they're not poor mathematicians.
No.
It's just their literacy skills. And so to see it help in both aspects is really, really rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, if you don't have understanding or the correct perception of those letters in the first place, then I mean, how are you supposed to put them together as a problem in maths, or how are you supposed to break down that problem in maths to actually get to understand the mechanics of that or solving that particular problem?
Yeah, that's it. And if you're seeing an S and you're not sure whether it's an S or a 5 or a C or a Z or a, you know, and your brain's kind of flicking it around and trying to figure it out, then you're not engaged in your learning, and so you're not going to master anything. You're just going to be trying to figure stuff out, and then tomorrow you have the same stuff to figure out.
I know. So you can imagine how many of our kids are sitting there in class just trying to figure out what they're saying without being able to understand or move any further forward because they're not sure. They don't have that certainty.
No, that's right. And they're just in a cloud of confusion.
Yeah, the whole time.
And I mean, that can lead to all sorts of things. That can lead to the sore stomachs and the headaches and the tears and the tantrums or the throwing of furniture or the disruption, the talking, like, you know, so what we see is poor behaviour, but the reality is what's driving that poor behaviour, and often it's disorientation and those feelings of confusion. With no strategies to turn them off and get themselves focused again. And that's right. Where Davis fills that gap. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so important, isn't it? And so very underrated, isn't it? You know, so yeah, just unfortunately, a lot of the time, you know, people will go to the medical side of things before realising that there's another much more simpler, much more cost-effective way that they can do, you know, or you do that.
Absolutely. And the lifelong learning strategies. So it's not just for reading or just for writing. It's for when, like for me at a funeral, I'm ridiculous. I just cry. I just have to look at someone and I cry. And I use my energy dial all the time in an emotional charged setting like that to be able to regulate myself so that I'm not flooded on the floor. And, you know, I didn't know that that's how I would use it, but for me, that's one place.
Super powerful. Yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So how important then do you feel it is to get encourage schools to get on board with these strategies? You know, what difference would it make if when educators understand how this approach works?
I think it's a game changer, Nikki, because we've got teachers that have got such massive expectations on them. They've got a curriculum that's absolutely jam-packed full. And if we can give our tamariki the ability to get themselves ready for learning and get themselves into that calm and focused state for learning, then our teachers actually get to teach again.
Yeah.
And, you know, I cringe when I see teachers just behaviour managing because that's what they've got to do, because that's the kids they've got at the moment, kids that can't self-regulate, because I've never been taught.
No. And I mean, you've got 25 kids in a class. It's really, really difficult to try and A, manage the logistics of the classroom, B, go ahead and do effective teaching when you've got kids that just can't do that.
That's right. If you've got half a dozen of them that are wriggling around on the floor while the other 20 are sitting still, that's all well and good, but those half a dozen wriggling, moving, you know, they're causing distraction every moment. And so those other ones that might be sitting still are then not focused either because they're distracted by the movement.
Absolutely. So yeah.
Yeah.
So what can we do then to encourage more schools and educators to get on board with these strategies?
I think the ultimate thing, Nikki, is that our principals understand that with the Davis learning strategies, it's not just about reading. Like, these lifelong learning strategies are about regulating themselves, and so it works as a behaviour management technique. So it works as a literacy improvement tool. It works in your mathematics. You know, like the activities and the exercises we do link into a lot of curriculum areas. You know, we're strengthening hand muscles. We're appealing to the creativity of our picture thinkers. Those that are not picture thinkers still get better at reading or deeper surface features. Deeper features when they're writing, or, you know, like they just get a better understanding of how words work and then learn the ability to master anything they want to or need to.
That's really cool, isn't it? And I've certainly had that experience with all my clients. But what stands out for me is my adult clients that I've had that have occupation-specific jargon that they need to know. And I had this one lady that says, doesn't matter how many times I read this, I just cannot understand or remember these terms that I need to talk to clients about. And once we went through and with her focus tools and we went through a visual sort of scenarios, I suppose, with her creating a meaning for this word or these technical words, well, by the end of that, she just had it nailed, and because she had something to hang those words on. She had that picture to sort of say, oh, well, blah, 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 that means blah, 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 and could easily after that have that clarity and certainty to be able to talk to her clients about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, there's 3 parts to every word, Nikki, and if you're missing the meaning, then you're not going to have full comprehension or understanding. Or if you're missing the spelling, once again, you're not going to have full meaning or understanding. Or if you're missing how to pronounce the word, then there's confusion there as well. So we need to get all 3 parts of those words to make a word make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole lot of ducks that need to be lined up, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Is there a particular success story that really stands out for you?
It's really funny you asked that, because just last week I was walking down a street that had been shut off for tree truck trimming people, and I put an invoice in a client's mailbox, and I turned around and I walked back past this young man dressed in fluoro, and he turned around with me and he goes, "Are you Rochelle?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Oh, my name is Mr. C, and you worked with me ages ago when I was a little fellow, and he's now 30.
Yeah.
And he said, and it was life-changing. I can't thank you enough. I was just thinking the other day, how do I get hold of you to say thank you? And I just went,
how buzzy is that?
oh, unbelievable. So this young man was at intermediate school. He's had his mischievous moments, he explained to me, but he's worked in Australia, he's worked in New Zealand, he's running teams of people, doing some extraordinary stuff. And he said, reading doesn't get in the way, Rochelle. He said, I can read anything. He said, I don't like to sit down and read a book, but he said, I can read anything else that I want to read, I can read. And he said, and my maths now doesn't stop me. He said, I might do it a bit differently to other people, but I can still do it.
Isn't that incredible?
After all these years, Nikki.
How special. That's really cool. So, well, I guess now's the perfect time then. What would you say to parents who are listening and thinking that their child might benefit from an approach like this? What would they look for, and what questions should they ask?
I think the first thing is read or listen to The Gift of Dyslexia, and I recommend that to all my clients or potential clients. Read that book or listen to that book because it gives you such a good understanding and different perspective of why your child or loved one may be behaving or doing the things they're doing, and it helps you to understand more. What they should look for, if there's a really big mismatch. So, my child's amazing at art and dance and drama, but man, they just can't read a sentence. Then generally if there's a big difference in abilities, it would be nice to think that, we have an intellectual capability and we fit within a couple of inches of that all the way along. But when we're dealing with poles apart, then I think we need to start asking questions. And you can ask those questions young, or, you can see this stuff. You don't have to wait till they're 8 or 9.
No,
you can see those differences.
Absolutely.
As I did with my own children when they were 3, I was like, hang on a second, this isn't right. This isn't fair.
Yeah.
And I always tell the parents that I meet with to trust their gut feeling. You know your child best.
Absolutely.
And if you feel like there is something not right, or your child's not progressing like you were expecting because they were such a bright, bubbly 4-year-old and suddenly they've got to school and they've lost their spunk or spark, then again, go and pick up that book and have a wee read, because it's tricky for teachers to keep their finger on the pulse of everything. They've got so much to do and so many different interventions they've got to work with and so many kids and all of that I think as parents we need to go, hang on a second, if something's not feeling right, let's investigate that and have an honest conversation with the teachers.
Good on you. Yep, I totally agree. Yep, totally agree with that, Rochelle. So that is, it's just been fascinating talking to you this afternoon. I've your insights and the journey you've been on has been really cool. So fascinating. So for our listeners out there who want to learn more about your work or get in touch with you, how can they find you?
And so they can call me on my cell phone number, 027 306 6743, or they can email me dyslexiaunlocked@gmail.com.
Awesome. That's excellent. So thank you again so much, Rochelle. Do you have any passing thoughts that you would like to pass on before we wrap up today?
Just that sometimes we've got to try something different. We sometimes get stuck in our ways, Nikki, and sometimes we actually need to step outside the box and go, actually, do you know what? Let's try something different, because Davis isn't conventional. It's not more pen and paper, and it's not more computer screens. It's jumping into that world of the dyslexic thinker and their 3-dimensional thinking. And it's using modelling clay and get, that hands-on experiential learning.
Absolutely.
And I think if we need to connect in their world to then be able to transition them back to the other world of word thinking, which is, I get a necessity to operate in. Yeah. But we have to go back and connect on their level and get that accurate perception and those focusing strategies in place first. And they're absolute game changers.
Oh, that's fantastic, Rochelle. I hope our listeners out there take your advice and take on board what you've said this afternoon. Thank you so much again for joining us. So if you have any feedback, listeners, or would like to share your thoughts about what Rochelle's spoken about this afternoon, please feel free to email me at dyslexiaunpuzzled@gmail.com. You can also connect with me on social media on Facebook, Dyslexia Unpuzzled, Dyslexia and Instagram, Nikki Mountain. Thank you again, listeners, for tuning in today on Radio Hawke's Bay, 104.7 FM and 1431 AM. If you missed any part of the program or want to share it with others, we will replay it on Tuesday at 12 o'clock PM. So go out there and spread the word. Thank you again, Rochelle, and thank you again so much for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Of 3D pictures, I'm a traveler of a different kind.
This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Hawke's Bay, your community access media station. Thanks to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.